Hello, I am the Walkthrough 184, and I've been doing a bunch of reviews, and I kinda wanted to do something different, and this was one of the topics that I wanted to really do, so here goes nothing. Alright, to preface this video, I am an avid achievement hunter ever since I got my Xbox 360 back in 2009, which funnily enough is also the same year that I started this YouTube channel. And as I'm recording this, I'm almost at 10,000 achievements unlocked, and over 210,000 gamer score. Now, as an achievement hunter, I would eventually find myself signing up for the website True Achievements in 2014, and, well, they have a whole different sort of scoring system. A scoring system based off of how much gamer score the achievement is worth times the ratio amount of how many people have unlocked it based off of how many people have played the game. So in other words, the higher ratio and score an achievement has, the less people have unlocked it. And currently I have a ratio of 2.61 and a TA score of 554,000. Now I managed to get that high of a score and ratio because I tend to go after achievements that not many of people have unlocked. Whether it be because that they are very difficult achievements, or they have a huge time investment, or a little bit of both. And I thought it'd be neat to do a video where I discuss my top 10 hardest achievements unlocked based off of their TA score. And with that all out of the way, let's jump right into this with the first achievement, Stampers Forever in Rare Replay. And in order to unlock this achievement, you must earn the most coveted title in the game by acquiring all 330 stamps found within it. The Rare Replay is a collection of 30 games made by Rare in honor of their 30th anniversary. And since Rare was acquired by Microsoft back in 2002 and they never sold them, that meant that this was one of the big exclusivity titles for the Xbox One. And I believe it still is, but I could be wrong about that. It was also the first game to utilize backwards compatibility on the system. Weirdly enough, this is also the only game I can think of where a selling point in the advertisements was the fact that you could unlock 10,000 gamer score in it, and sitting on top of that difference of 9,850 was this achievement for unlocking most of it. I do say most since there are some achievements that aren't tied to stamps in this game, and when it comes to the backwards compatible games, you only have to get 75% of gamer score in them to get all the stamps. But as for the stamps that are a part of the games connected to the actual main game disc, they all have each either 5 or 10 stamps to get. And there's always one for completing the game, and then there's a whole bunch where you need to just complete certain requirements. Like, if I remember correctly, there's one for Cobra Triangle where you have to gain 1 million points cumulatively, and one for RC Pro AM where you have to also cumulatively win 30 races, but that's all just for the main game, as there are also stamps that you have to collect through the challenge playlists as well as the snapshot playlists. The snapshots are usually just random scenarios for whatever game you're in, and you just have to complete it before you die or end up losing all your time. While the challenge playlists are just 5 sets of snapshots that you have to do all at once with only 3 tries. Now, with all that said, I would say that this isn't necessarily a hard achievement to unlock. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are definitely hard parts hidden within, like needing to get the A ranks in Cameo, completing either Perfect Dark Games on Perfect Agent, just beating Battletoads, or even the aforementioned challenges and snapshots. But the real challenge here is just the huge time investment, and if you're really willing to put in all that time. And as someone who has put in all that time, I will say there are definitely both positives and negatives from it. The big negative is that you have to play games that are just bad or you don't like, all the way to fruition. I mean, for me, some of the games that I really didn't like playing was Lunar Jetman, Saberwolf, Jet Force Gemini, Cameo, and Perfect Dark Zero. But on the flip side, for positive aspects, you are not only playing some of the greatest games of all time, but also some hidden gems as well. I mean, some of the games that I discovered and ended up loving were Jetpack, Slalom, RC Pro AM, Viva Pinata and its sequel, Grab by the Ghoulies, and Blast Corps. I mean, I love some of these games so much that I actually went out and got real copies of them. Now, one bone that the developers did throw is the availability of cheats and save states within the older games, and as expected, they do make the older games much easier pills to swallow. Except for Battletoads, that game is still hard even with all this help. Now, unfortunately, these cheats are not in every single game, they're only in the games before the Nintendo 64 era, so when you get that far, you're just at the mercy of whatever game you're currently on. But when it comes down to the later games, more specifically the backwards compatible games, there is a sort of bonus that you can achieve going into them. Although this bonus does only come from a luck factor. This factor being whether or not you have played the game previously and already unlocked enough achievements to get all the stamps in it. The only game I lucked out on was Banjo-Kazooie, but even then I still replayed it. And that's really all there is to say about this achievement. But as for the collection as a whole currently, there is nothing left to unlock in it. But soon there will be an old classic joining the ranks, and I can't wait for it. Alright, moving on, we now have our second achievement, which is the final chapter in Friday the 13th, the game. An achievement that is only unlocked after you play 1,000 multiplayer matches as Jason. Now, Friday the 13th, the game, is what I believe is called an asymmetrical game, where it's one person versus 7 others. In this case, one Jason versus 7 camp counselors. And the goal of the counselors is to escape the camp, whether it be through driving out by repairing a car or calling the cops. And they have to do this before, well, Jason kills them all. It's honestly a fun game, it just sucks that the people who made it are idiots and, well, did something they weren't supposed to, and now they can't update the game anymore. Now, as for the achievement itself, it's actually a part of a foursome, as there are also achievements for completing 500 matches as Jason and as a counselor, as well as an achievement to complete 1,000 matches as a counselor. But the reason this one is worth the most out of all 4 of them is because the way this game works is that you're not always guaranteed to play as Jason. I mean, if you were in a full 8-person lobby, you would only have a 1 in 8 chance to become him. But luckily, there is a way around it since matches and private lobbies do count. But even then, much like with the rare replay, you're still in for the long haul. So get together with someone who needs 1,000 matches as a counselor and have at it. Now, how the matches should go is that your partner will tell you where he spawned in, you teleport over to where he is, kill him, and then there you go. Now just rinse and repeat until all 1,000 matches are done. Now, since this achievement was so long and boring, I tried to look for anything I could cut corners on, and I actually figured out which map has the shortest intro, which is Crystal Lake Small, and which Jason has the shortest outro, which is Part 5 Jason, as well as a bunch of other factors that I actually ended up putting into a guide, since the only other one that was available while I was doing this wasn't really a guide, just a guide telling you how long it would take to unlock this achievement. Now, the last thing I will say about this achievement is that because of its requirement of such minimal input, it's definitely best to find something else to fill the time with, whether it be watching a TV show, watching a movie, or I'm pretty sure even the guy I was doing it with was reading a book. As for me, I watched the entirety of Mike Tyson Mysteries for some reason. Great show. Now on to achievement number 3, which is Aggressive Nightmare in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, how you unlock this achievement is to survive Aggressive Nightmare mode. Now, I'm assuming everyone here knows how one of these games work. You usually play the role as a security guard at a, sort of Chuck E. Cheese knockoff, and every night the animatronics in it get up and start walking around, and if they get to you, they just kill you. But unfortunately, you are not able to leave your post, so the only way to fend off against these animatronics is to keep an eye on them with the security cameras, and then either close the doors around you to prevent them from getting in, or put on a mask to trick them, or to just flash a flashlight to reset their programming, as well as a whole slew of unique things within each game, like needing to keep an eye on Foxy by using the camera a bunch, or keeping the note box wound up, which leads us to the third game in the franchise. To start off with, this game takes place in a horror attraction at an amusement park, and because of this, at first, there are no animatronics. That is, until the people running the operation find one. And not only is it alive, but it also brought a whole bunch of pissed off ghosts with it. Now, the reason I said all that is because this is, I believe, the only game in the FNAF series where only one animatronic can actually kill you. All the evil spirits kind of just hinder you along the way if you get caught by them. So basically what you need to do to survive the night is get Springtrap, which is the name of the animatronic, as far away from your office as possible by using the audio lures on the cameras. You also have to block off the entrances to the vents, whichever one he is currently in or closest to, since all the vents are basically a direct route to your office. Another gameplay factor is that since you're using such crappy equipment, it will keep constantly breaking down, and you need to keep rebooting it in order to still have a fighting chance. Although every time you do reboot it, you're completely vulnerable. And on top of all this, you also have to stay vigilant against the aforementioned vengeful spirits, since they all are avoidable. And if you do end up getting jump scared by one of them, that's an immediate vent fix you need to do. Now, the reason I described the way this game plays is because the game mode you need to play for the achievement is basically the regular game, but everything is turned up to 11. Everything is breaking down all the time, the ghosts are always basically there, and Springtrap is just non-stop moving. He truly is on a mission to kill you as quickly as possible. And because of that, I am happy to say that we finally have an actually hard achievement on this list, which is pretty funny since I'm pretty sure this is considered the easiest game in the series. But even with harboring that title, this achievement is nowhere near a cakewalk. Now, the key to success is to have Springtrap as far away from your office as possible by juggling him between the 2 top right cameras or the 4 middle main cameras. Now, obviously, this isn't going to work 100%, so you do have to keep an eagle eye out for him, since he not only hides within, like, each camera, but the cameras themselves are so crappy that you could barely see him. Combined with this, you need to have the vent that he's closest to closed, or else you're just screwed. The same is true when it comes to the phantom animatronics, since if you get hit by just one of them, you're as good as dead, since you need to reboot the ventilation immediately. And staying on the topic of the ventilation, there is a chance that whenever it breaks down, or it's guaranteed, I don't know, that it will cause a fake Springtrap duplication, hallucination, whatever, to come in and throw you off from the real one. Now, when it actually comes down to the rebooting and you have multiple things to reboot, it is quicker to reboot one at a time than hit reboot all. And the best thing to reboot first is the audio system, so that way you have at least a defense still. Like, you can reboot it, go back to the cameras, use it, and then go back to reboot the other stuff. Now, the last major piece of information that I will give in order for you to survive the night is that you not only have to be visually aware where Springtrap is, but you also have to be audially aware as well, because there is an ambient whistle noise that plays the closer he gets to your office, and the closer he is, the more louder and intense it gets. And you also have to keep an ear out for him banging around in the vents. Now, when I was going for this achievement, I was kind of an idiot with this aspect. This is because I had so many failed attempts that I was just so annoyed that I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna make this better by listening to some music while I do it. And what I ended up listening to was the Rocky IV soundtrack, which I guess isn't really the most appropriate thing for a game like this, but hey, it worked. But even when I was listening to music, I knew that if I managed to get to 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., it was time to turn it off and take the game 100% seriously. And in the end, even with all these tips and whatever else, this achievement still seems to just boil down to a guessing game of random chaotic chance. Alright, here we go with achievement number 4, which is Adventure 4 in Pac-Man Championship Edition 2. And this achievement is unlocked by clearing 6-15 in Adventure mode. Oh, how I love the Pac-Man Championship games, how they take the original formula of the arcade game and just go all in with it. With the huge increase in speed, the awesome ghost chases, the sweet blaring music, it really is a great series, with the goal of trying to get as high a score as you can, just like a true arcade game, or at least that is the goal of the main score attack section of this game. As for this achievement, we must venture on over to Adventure mode. In this mode, you must complete a set of stages and then a boss at the end, with the objective of needing to get a certain amount of score in a certain amount of time, or eat a certain amount of fruit in a certain amount of time. Then there's the boss fights where you need to gain as many extra lives as possible in order to defeat it. And speaking of bosses, that is actually what the achievement is. Defeating the last boss in Adventure mode. Now, for how difficult this game is, I will say that the bosses is probably one of the more easier parts, or if not the easiest. And this final boss is no exception, which leads us to the true difficult nature of this achievement, which is actually just getting to the boss. And in order to do that, you must get 222 stars in this mode, which in other words means that you have to get all the stars in every single stage and every single boss. And boy howdy, you're gonna need to sharpen your skills to get this one, because you have to basically play every single level perfectly. I mean, you have to eat as many pellets as you can, get rid of the ghosts as quickly as possible, and if you manage to do all that, you're fine, but if you lose a life, like a single life, you're just better off restarting. And on top of that, in this mode, you don't even get any bonus score for extra lives or extra bombs. Now, one thing that I apparently did while going for this achievement was turn off the music to get, I guess, complete focus on the game, which is kind of just funny considering what I said on the last achievement. But other than that, that's really all I have to say about this achievement. Just keep replaying the levels until you master them all, then once you actually get to the final boss at that point, it should be just an easy win. Okay, next up we have achievement number 5, which is Masterminds in Grand Theft Auto 5. An achievement that is tied to the GTA Online section of this game, and in order to unlock it, you must complete all 3 criminal mastermind challenges in the Doomsday Heist. Oh, Grand Theft Auto 5. I have fond memories of watching that trailer and just being so hyped for this game. Then it came out, and at first, I really loved it. But then eventually it all came crashing down, and, well, I mean, it's not a bad game, but not the greatest of all time that we all thought it was going to be. But after a week, that didn't matter much with the release of GTA Online, and oh, what a release it was. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. GTA 5 was the newest release into the legendary sandbox open-world crime simulator of the Grand Theft Auto series. And other than bringing back the old chaotic mayhem that we all expected, this game also brought the new feature of being able to play as 3 separate characters, and new bank heist missions, like heists that you would actually have to plan out with setup missions and like picking your crew out. This would not only go on to become one of the most successful video games of all time, but also get re-released onto 2 different generations later down the line. But we all know that this game's longevity of 9+ years was not solely because of the single player content, but instead this game's multiplayer, GTA Online, which is a very in-depth type of multiplayer that keeps bringing back players as well as creating new ones every day. I mean, it's so in-depth that people usually say that GTA Online and GTA 5 are separate games. I mean, you're able to own your own cars, own your own apartments, run around the main map, like free roam with all your friends, play missions with each other. It was really fun. I mean, it was basic stuff, but it was still fun to get into a deathmatch and go up against people. And although this game mode started off pretty bare bones, even comparable to GTA 4's multiplayer, it would eventually get so many updates that you don't even know where to start. More game modes, more missions, and finally the most important, heists. Which finally leads us to the topic of this achievement, the Doomsday Heist. A heist that sees you working alongside the government to save America. And you will go up against rogue agents, the Russians, and an AI that has control over juggernauts. Just to name a few obstacles that will be in your way. Now how the actual mission structure goes is that there are 3 acts. There are setup missions, which are just regular missions. There are prep missions, which are done in free mode. And then there's the actual heist, there being one at the end of each act. Now for this achievement, there are 3 different challenges that you must complete. One for 2-player, one for 3-player, and one for 4-player. And in order to complete these challenges, you must beat the entirety of the Doomsday Heist, all on hard, all missions in order, and with no deaths between all players. Now before I even get into how I did this achievement, I have to tell a little story first. As I already mentioned, I wasn't the biggest fan of GTA 5, so when it came out on the next-gen systems, I had no, reason really to buy it again. And that's how it was for the longest time until I met someone while boosting the GTA 4 achievements. Now the dude that I met, who unfortunately doesn't play Xbox anymore, wanted to get this achievement. One of his friends was ready to go, but that was only 2 out of 4, so he wanted me to join them, since he knew I had the willpower to get this done. So he went out of his way to buy me this game. But still, we all had to wait, since the old ability to bring your 360 character over to the Xbox One was not available anymore. So starting from scratch, I had to rebuild myself up and get reacquainted with the online mode. And when I was all good and ready, it was time for us to undertake this monumental task. Now to start off with this achievement, you do need a dedicated crew, because one of the requirements is that you cannot join a different crew from the one that you started this challenge with, like their organization or biker club. And our crew was dedicated enough, the only issue was that there was only 3 of us. So when we finally made it to the 4-player challenge, we just had to find someone who was willing to do it, and every time we failed, we would have to keep cycling out through players until we actually found someone who was willing to stay after every failure. Now, one piece of solace that we had when we were doing this was the fact that we were able to get out of having to do the whole thing from the beginning again every time we failed, which was achieved by quitting out of the game before it could save our progress and reset the challenge. But it wasn't always 100% guaranteed to work, because if you weren't quick enough, it would save and you would be screwed. And the other, situation would be if you were dead while you were in your personal vehicle, if your personal vehicle got destroyed, the game would just instantly autosave and you were just screwed. But most of the time it would work, so much to the point that we actually got a little bit too comfortable with it, because one of us decided to play around with C4 and blew us all up, and of course that was one of the times that we couldn't prevent it from restarting. And 2 more pieces of information that kinda helped us out throughout doing this was the fact that although you couldn't die during setup or heist missions, you were able to fail objectives with no penalty. So if we ended up blowing up the car that we needed or letting the guy we were protecting die, we would just reset and continue on from the checkpoint. And when it came to the prep missions in the free roam, you were able to die as many times as you want, whether it be from the other players or the enemy AI. But just to make it as quickly as possible, as well as safe as possible, we would usually go into private lobbies, which I only recently found out is now available to you and you don't have to glitch your way into them anymore. Now, when it came down to the missions themselves, very few of them were actually easy. Some of them were really boring to do, and a vast majority of them were pretty difficult. Now, when it comes to those missions, some of the harder ones that we had struggled with were getting ULP out of the forgery, fighting our way out of the server farm, the hangar shootout, which was a true bitch, the docks hostage shootout where you meet the invisible juggernauts for the first time, putting out the servers on fire, which I wish I could just block out of my memory, escorting ULP with that shitty missile truck, the beginning of the tank mission, which was so hard that we actually found a way through the back way of the scrapyard to skip all the enemies, and of course all the heists themselves, except for maybe Act 2's. Now, even though all those missions were really tough, by the time of our final run of this, we basically got through all of them with no deaths, no issue. We only had one right at the end, which was really bullshit. And I do mean the end, since it was the part in the Act 3 heist where you're running through the missile silo, like the tunnels, and apparently in those tunnels, the crates that are in them, they're explosive. Like, if you accidentally shoot them, they go off. And that's what happened to one of our guys, but luckily we all quit in time, and all we had to do was reset Act 3, and then we were done. Now, there are keys to success to unlock this achievement, the most vital of which is having snacks and body armor in your inventory. Be sure to always use them if you're close to death, and just have maybe sometimes the menu open to eat them, and like spam them if you need to. And another very important piece of information is to keep them always stocked. After every mission, refill yourself all the way. Now, all that stuff is required, but here's just some stuff that we did to try and cut time anywhere we could. Now, I already mentioned the free roam private lobby, but whenever we would go into the actual missions, we would just have the outfits saved to what we owned instead of like what the game gives you, so we wouldn't waste time switching our outfits around. And we would also, when the mission started, just get into whoever had the fastest car and just drive off. And then there was also the stuff that we either bought or already owned to make this as easy as possible. Like getting upgraded weapons such as the sniper rifle with explosive bolts, or just getting a minigun so you could take out the juggernauts easier. We all went out and bought the best attachments for the weapons we were using, as well as removed the suppressors from all of them, so that way they were all firing at peak performance. Some of us even had gun lockers, which allow you to have customized weapon loadouts, so we were able to keep out only our best weapons, which for me was the combat MG, the assault shotgun, the AP pistol, and the special carbine, which was the best assault rifle at the time, but there's probably something else better now. As well as I kept out all the heavy weapons, because honestly they're all useful. But yeah, we would try to do anything that would help us out. Like, if we really needed to during a gunfight go into first person, we would do it. But I will say that out of the many things that we did, the one main thing that probably guaranteed us to victory was the fact that one of us owned a Vigilante. And you could tell by the name that the car is basically the Batmobile, so it's fully armored and fully stocked with rockets. And this not only made vehicle combat much easier, but also combat against enemies who were outside and like next to vehicles that could be blown up. I only wonder how much easier this would have been if we all had one. Alright, that is everything except for just one last tip I want to throw out there, which is something that I personally struggled with a little, which involved the ladders. Now, I don't know how to properly explain this, so I'll just say where it happened the most, which is the Ulp Foundry Mission, in which if you are the lookout guy, like on top of the water tower, be sure to be as like soft as possible when you're leaving, moving towards the ladder, because if you're not careful, you'll end up falling off of it because your character just will not go for the ladder. He'll just try and jump off. And we lost a game like that once when I died from that. There's probably a few more instances like that, but that's the most prominent one I could think of. Or at least that was an issue, because of course when I tried to get footage for this part, it didn't work. Like, it actually worked. It actually went to the ladder and didn't drop me off. But I guess the bottom line is just be careful trying to get onto ladders if you're trying to go onto them from the top. Or just be really careful against any ledge, because you don't want to be an idiot like me and fall and die, then have to restart because of it. So, yeah, that's everything I gotta say about this achievement. Is it just me, or did anyone else notice the funny number coincidences on this list? Like how achievement number 3 is in FNAF 3, achievement number 4 is Adventure 4, and achievement number 5 is in Grand Theft Auto 5. It's kinda weird how that all lined up the way it did.